Hey guys, what's good? It's Wes. So this video is going to go over a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And the reason why it's near and dear to my heart is I don't do it. It's a whole step of the process of making an image that I don't really do. And we're going to talk a little bit about why. We're also going to talk about why I should. And we're also going to show a new method that I'm trying out. I've kind of done it before, but not really dedicated time. But there's a different intent now on this. And I really want to make thumbnailing work for me, but all of the conventional ways that people might thumbnail that you might see, you know, the 9 boxes of aspect ratios and trying to do little sketches here and sketches there. Yeah. I don't vibe with it. I never have. I don't think I ever will. And why that might be okay, but how can we utilize the idea of thumbnail and thumbnail sketching, as it were, to make images that are worth investing time in? So yes, thumbnailing is one of those things that anytime you go online or you're reading, art books or all this stuff, everyone talks about the importance of thumbnailing. And mentally, I understand. I get it, because you want to plan the image before you do the image. Makes sense. I don't know what it is about my brain, or maybe the way it works, or maybe the way it doesn't work, that I never really dedicated a lot of time to that step. I wanted to quote unquote get to the good stuff. I was like, oh, I do really cool brush work. I do cool edges. I like all the fancy, nice painterly things. And had that do the heavy lifting to make sure the images read okay or were interesting enough to look at. And we're always on this journey to improve, to find different methods, to try different things, just to see how they experiment and work within our workflow. And I could just never get down the idea of thumbnailing. I thought, it sounds harsh, but I thought it was a waste of time. Because it's like, okay, if I have this idea for an image, why don't I just start working on the image? Like, why wouldn't... What's all this other stuff to where I'm making little boxes and boo. Like, what is that? That just seems like you're stalling. You're going to get to the image anyway. Why would you dedicate time to this? And I know a lot of other artists out there are probably screaming at the screen right now, because it's, from what I'm finding, maybe the most important part of creating an image that is worth investing actual time in. So lately, if you've been watching the streams, or if you've been, just hanging out on the channel, you know that I'm experimenting and trying to stretch out the way I think about making images in painting and drawing and all that stuff. So I've been a pro for 5 years now, and I still get regular gigs, have amazing clients, do work that I'm pretty proud of, but I always felt like there's something missing in the work, and that I'm almost doing my clients a disservice by not being to the level or the ability that I want to be. Now, part of that could just be artist imposter syndrome. We're always our own harshest critic. But I think there is some merit to it, at least in my case, because what I started to find, especially lately, is I could be 4 to 5 hours into an image that may not be worth investing 4 or 5 hours in. Because by the time I would edit or fix or shift or warp or whatever, the image that I started with is not the image I end with. As I'm solving problems and things like that, it becomes something different. And this is probably why it's important to thumbnail. So there's 2 books that I've really been studying, and I highly recommend both of them. One is Framed Ink, and the other is Framed Ink Volume 2. But these books are incredible. And there's a few little like nuggets of wisdom. I mean, there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom in the books, but there's a few that really resonated with me. And I've read through the books 4 to 5 times each. Like, look through them and, yes, and theorize, and, oh, this is a great idea, and, oh, I see. And then I never took action. I never tried the techniques, which seems silly, right? Because it's like reading a fitness magazine and then not working out. You're not going to get fit. You got to do the thing, you know. But what I want to show you guys is I'm working on an image right now, and I started it using some of the techniques that I learned in framed ink or that I've read about, and I need to start putting into practice. And I'm very much a form painter, meaning I really enjoy light and shadow, how things go around forms, you know, the Terminator lines, all the theory behind it, and how does light like bounce and reflect and all this other stuff. And lately I've been feeling like that has been more of an actual burden than it has been a benefit. I know how to render. I know how to paint. I know how to do edge work. I know how to make an image get to final so it can be published, so it can be, you know, part of a deal. And that's all well and good. But is the image interesting? And there's this idea of form and being able to render out things and stuff like that. And shape. And shape is the thing that I think I have been missing. So instead of thumbnailing in a way to where I sketch and do little pockets of, you know, the aspect ratios and trying to pencil sketch and, yes. Well, let me make the design of this armor, or let me make the design and let me try to fill it. I couldn't do it that way because I get bored. For whatever reason, I'm like, okay, if I'm doing this, why am I just not doing it? If I'm spending all this time trying to design this thing, why am I just not doing it on the live canvas, on the thing that's going to be the final? Basically, I would be thumbnailing as I'm working, you know, erasing and adding back and, you know, shifting things. So basically, I guess it was my way of thumbnailing, but it never really had a sense of direction or purpose. But now, after really reading through Framed Ink Volume 1 and 2 and really thinking about it, I think I cracked the code on how I can thumbnail and how I can get out. Maybe it is just one idea. Maybe I don't do 5 or 6 sketches. Maybe I go in and I work through the thumbnailing faster, better, and it makes more sense because it's utilizing shape, the thing I'm missing in my work, in my opinion, versus the form, which I can then add later and start refining things. So we're going to take a look at the time lapse. The main artist, besides the Framed Ink series, that really inspired this, because they thought so differently about art than the way I do, because their images look completely different, is Mobius. So Mobius is somebody that, I mean, needs no introduction, of course. And whenever I was younger, I didn't quite get the hype. But now, as I'm more advanced, and I need to work on shape language, and I really need to work on composition, and I really need to work on the feeling of an image, not hiding behind things like shadows and, you know, the intent of rendering light and all this other stuff. Just making a good image for the sake of a good image. Having that nice, beautiful poster look. The image just works. Mobius is pretty hard to beat. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how Mobius is kind of inspiring me, the difference between shape and form. And then you can see in real time as I work through this new method, and it's something that I'm actually having a whole lot of fun with. And fun is a word I haven't said about art in a long time. So let's hop to it and let's take a look at the new thumbnailing technique that I'm trying out. All right, before we get too far into this and start, you know, discussing the idea behind this and kind of the method that we're using and things like that, just 2 quick things. The first thing, I do a longer form version of this on the September 7th live stream archive, which I will link in the description and also at the end on the thumbnails and stuff. You might see it. But it's about 3 hours long, and I go kind of step by step through it while answering questions about this method. So if you want a little bit more of a slow burn version of exactly how to do this, go check that out. And the second thing is, I do want to give an epilepsy warning, or a photosensitivity warning. So there is a portion of this to where we go from black and white to color, and I do that through using gradient maps. And whenever I'm sorting through the gradient maps, I do it fairly quickly. And what that does is it kind of makes the image sort of wig out a little bit, because you're basically just putting new hues. And because we're speeding up the footage, it kind of has a strobe effect to it. So I'm going to put in this area right here. And also I'm going to mark it on the timeline on the YouTube video. Kind of the portion where that happens. It should only be about 10 to 15 seconds maybe of the video. So I'll be sure to put that on there. I just wanted to give a heads up before we get too far into things. So now we are here, and yeah, I don't really thumbnail. I just, for whatever reason, the kind of quote unquote sketchy part of the process that you do at the very beginning, I always found boring. And I don't know why. And I don't know if because sketching isn't my strong suit, if I just didn't like doing it, so I never got good at it, so I never want to do it, if it's one of those kind of self-fulfilling prophecies or what have you. But I never really gelled with that idea. I wanted to get to the good stuff quicker. And, the good stuff, I really like brush work and, edge control and wet brushes and, mixing color and doing all that stuff. And it felt like with thumbnails, I never really had that sort of interest. It never felt interesting to do until trying this method. So this is a method I've tried way back when. Whenever I first kind of really started dedicating time to digital art and getting my first gigs and stuff like that, probably in late 2019 or so. But I don't think I was ready for it yet. I saw it, and I think I bought my copy of Framed Ink in 2019. And I remember reading through it and being like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to try it. And I don't think I was ready for it. I don't think I knew what problem it was solving. So it was just this really foreign concept, just using pure black and pure white to block out silhouettes of shapes and shadow more so than, form or sketching design stuff. Like I just didn't quite get it. And it brings up a good point that we'll kind of touch on a little bit here momentarily about different techniques that you see, or different techniques that maybe your favorite artist does, or if you follow other YouTube people and they do some stuff. Maybe you've tried it once or twice and it just didn't work for you. And it doesn't mean that it's not part of your style, or, that it just doesn't work in general, or, oh, hey, it only works for them because they're good at it. You may just not be at the place in your art journey to where that method, whatever they're using, is going to solve the problem that you're looking to solve. You know what I mean? So I'm a big fan of having all this stuff kind of in the tool belt, like study all kinds of art, because you never know what you're going to find and what's going to start jumping out at you, or when it's going to be useful. It may not be useful right now, but let's say 4 or 5 years down the line, you rethink about it, you come at it with new knowledge, and you're like, oh, I see where this fits in my workflow. So essentially, I think why this is working, and really what it was, is I needed to find something exciting to do for every part of a painting. Because as you work for clients and as you do stuff and you make big projects and you start, doing visual development for things and stuff, it is a job. So there are parts that get a little mundane. And that first probably hour of a painting is actually my least favorite, because I don't have that sense of discovery, I guess. Because when I get a brief or a prompt or whatever sent across the desk, I'm like, okay, I already kind of have an idea of how I want to do this. I have 1, maybe 2 ideas, but I don't feel like I have to thumbnail them. Do you know what I mean? because I kind of already get it. I'm like, okay, I can probably do something like this, and the camera's like this, and the lighting will be kind of like this, and yeah, we'll make it work. And then we get on into the image, and what I started to find is, yeah, the image itself maybe turns out okay, but it's never that exciting, fun thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, whenever you're working on something and it's kind of a drag, and sure, it looks fine, but like, what is it all for? You start kind of digging into this existential dread of it. Like, oh, I know I have to render that thing, and yeah, the armor is there and the sunlight's out and stuff like that. And that'll be cool and it'll look nice when it's done, but it's just something, whatever. You have a very whatever, laissez-faire approach to it. And I think viewers, even if they don't know how to paint, or even if they don't know much about like art theory or color theory or whatever, they can sense if you had fun working on something. You know what I mean? I always think about like the Ocean's movies, the Ocean's 11, 12, and 13. Those movies are a blast to watch because you can tell those actors and actresses had a blast making it. Like one of them, Julia Roberts, acts as Julia Roberts. Like they break the fourth wall, and then people keep making jokes like, I guess you kind of look like her, but the nose isn't quite right or something. It's just fun, like a fun, wink at the camera type stuff. And if you can find a way to bring that into creating your work, I think the audience is also rewarded as well. Does that make sense? Like if you're having fun the whole time, the audience will have fun looking at it. It's going to be more dynamic, more interesting. So I wanted to find a way to kind of test my mettle and figure out a way to start capturing more of that early on in the painting process. And I think this is working well, because instead of working with like sketchy lines and trying to design something before it's ready and then like filling it with paint by numbers sort of things, this is very dynamic from the get-go. And utilizing some of the things I saw in Framed Ink, namely using the alphabet for your composition, which we'll talk about in a second, but utilizing some of these tools makes for a dynamic image from the first like 5 brushstrokes. And it's more fun because you then start building your idea within these brushstrokes that were already pretty dynamic. So you're building good stuff on top of good stuff. The foundation is there, so the image can't help but work. And also, you could make 5 or 6 of these in 10 minutes. And whichever one kind of catches your eye, you can push forward with, right? So let's talk about kind of the composition side of this. Composition is kind of one of my weak points. Yeah, I know about the Fibonacci sequence circle, the golden ratio, what is it? The thirds, breaking things into thirds and third of a third and all that stuff, and trying to just find ways to add interest and detail on specific parts of a canvas. That's one thing. But rules are kind of made to be broken. And also some of my favorite artists don't really follow those. They could, and I guess you could break them down mathematically enough that they might follow some of them, but they're not going out of their way to start an image by like, well, I need the rule of thirds and I need the top left corner to be this and the top right. Like, they don't think that way. They just put cool shapes down, manipulate the shapes until it's something kind of appealing and eye-catching, and then you just fill stuff inside of the shapes. And as long as you don't break out of that silhouette, the image is probably going to work pretty well. I know Ryan Pancoast is one of my favorite magic artists. Well, really one of my favorite contemporary artists anyway, magic or not. And that's very much how he works. He will make his composition based on silhouettes and then work within the silhouette to make his designs. And it makes total sense now. And I've seen it before. I've tried it before. I just don't think I was ready. But a great way in Framed Ink, and I think Ryan uses this, and there's quite a few other artists that I really look up to that use this as well, is they use letters of the alphabet to start their composition. So with this one that we started with the alien soldier and, kind of the weird sci-fi Mobius inspired background stuff, I started with the letter L, an uppercase L. It essentially makes a triangle where the base is longer than the height or whatever. You know what I mean? Because if you just lay uppercase L down, kind of flat on its back, yeah, all you have to do is just add that, the angled line, and then you have your triangle. And then you kind of work from there. I'm with things like landscapes, doing the Z shape to make a river come towards the viewer, or with body poses. If you want a good dynamic pose, if you read stuff like Framed Ink or even like How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, they talk a lot about the C shape and the S shape for bodies, and utilizing very basic, very fast things like letters of the alphabet, something that a lot of us are very, very familiar with. It makes it more dynamic because now, can you put the letter L somewhere interesting on the canvas? Can you do it? Just start with that problem to solve. Does that look cool? All right. Maybe add another letter over there. Okay, you did that one. Now add a circle somewhere. Cool. Now maybe add a square. And can you use a line to connect that L to the circle? All right. And as you start doing these really basic, very repeatable steps, after doing that for 5 to 10 minutes, now you look and you kind of have a picture. You know what I mean? It's almost like a mosaic. It's a stained glass look of a picture. And then you can use white for what is being shown, and then black for maybe what's in shadow. And then you look at it a little bit and you're like, hey, this kind of looks like a blank. This looks like a lion. This looks like a assassin. This looks like a sci-fi guy going through some ruins. And then build it up from there. Your image is going to start working up more organically that way because it's starting with organic shapes. It's starting with stuff that we see all the time that's reliable and can be easily manipulated on the canvas. So I was truly blown away with how fast the image started coming together, even after putting in the first few strokes. And not only on this one, but also on the version we did on the live stream of the woman on the sunset, like with the sunset at the ocean. That image came together. I think 85% of that image was done in like 11 minutes. And it was just, oh yeah, she's standing on the ocean front and she's looking out at a sunset. Okay, let's make that picture. And then ta-da, you know what I mean? It really did feel like a magic trick. It felt almost like it was a hack. It was a life hack of art. I was like, oh, you can make the picture just with black, with a big brush, put your shapes in, and then figure out the rest, and it's going to work. You see stuff. I know Andrew Lumis in his book, Creative Illustration, he talks about this, and this is how he made landscapes. He would just put, here's a silhouette of a tree, here's a silhouette of a mountain, here's a silhouette of a bicycle, here's a silhouette of a whatever. Let me put these in this image, and then I can move these shapes around and then find out what image works the best. And I think that's a great way to do thumbnailing. Instead of worrying about the pencil sketching and getting in and trying to get your line weight okay. And if you're into that, if that's how you work, continue doing it. You know what I mean? Like, don't feel one way or another about doing it that way. Like that, if that method works, continue to do it. But if you're like me and that method never quite resonated with you, give this a shot. It's very bizarre whenever you first start. In fact, I've only done it successfully twice, maybe 3 times now, and it's still very bizarre. But I think that's part of the appeal of it, is you have to activate your mind from the first brushstroke. You have to be like, okay, what does that look like? Well, and if I want a silhouette of a person, where does the light hit them, or where does where is it going to kind of be in shadow? But it's funny because it's almost a step back even from that. It's like I'm very much an artist that deals with form. I like showing how light wraps around objects or gives mood based on like light coming through the trees, and you see these nice, light rays and stuff. Like I love the film Blade Runner. Ridley Scott is a genius at using light in his shots and using it almost to give that sense of three-dimensionality. It almost like breaks through the screen. You know what I mean? It's so cool. But that's kind of how I like to think about lighting and form. So I'm very form-based in that regard. But I think this is great because this is very shape-based. I don't care necessarily about how the form goes around the object. Not yet, at least. I need to make sure that the image is worth the time invested. So many times lately, even on professional work, I've been 30 hours, 35 hours into a painting that, in my opinion, kind of doesn't work as well as it could. I had the idea in my mind. Maybe I put a lot of, rendering time or technique or texture or whatever, and it looks fine, and it's definitely serviceable, and the client's happy, and I'm happy that the client's happy. But I almost feel like I did the image or the idea a disservice by not giving it a little extra something, a little dynamicism, a little, I don't know, a little extra sauce. You know what I mean? It's almost like the picture, the image is the juice worth the squeeze. And with this method, I can see how really developing my eye and developing the feel of a good thumbnail, a good readable notan, the old Japanese calligraphy, sort of pure black and pure white shapes on top of each other. What stories can that tell? And can that be exciting? And how can we dig in and make that an even better image with all of our techniques, with our rendering, with our texture, with our, brush engines and all this other stuff? But is the dynamics of the composition just on pure shape? You can do this with construction paper. You know what I mean? Move those things around. How does it look? Is it cool to look at? Are you interested in how those shapes are interacting? If so, you probably have a pretty strong image. You have something that people are going to want to look at and spend their time looking at. And really utilizing that and then bringing your value paintings like we normally do. Then you start pushing the light and the form and things like that within those silhouettes of the shape. Then I found out you can just use gradient maps for a majority of this. In fact, I'm really becoming a bigger and bigger fan of using gradient maps to make my underpaintings because you can change them instantly. If something's not working, go into the gradient map layer, change the temperature maybe of the gradient map, or choose a different, instead of an orange, try more of a red. If the red's not working, maybe introduce some cools with some purples. Mess with it. You know what I mean? And then you're going to find something that like really catches your eye, like, oh, that looks cool. And then you can trust that instinct. You can trust it, make that your new quote unquote underpainting. Then you have a palette, you have your values already set. All you need to do then is color pick. You merge everything into a different layer, into a brand new layer, and then you just color pick, use whatever brushes you want, go into, Rebel or Art Rage, or use some impasto brushes, or, use more lasso tool graphic design language based on what you like to do. And you're 98% of the way there. The rest of it's just fun. It's just gravy. And you're excited, at least I am, to finish the picture because it's more dynamic than your other stuff was. You know what I mean? So to me, this has become like a win-win-win because it's helping me with thumbnailing and composition. It's helping me stay interested the entire time I'm making an image. And I can do all the stuff I like. I can do those edges. I can do that brush work. Later, when it's ready, when the image is ready for me to do that stuff, I can literally break this down step by step now and it's repeatable, it's actionable, it's something I can take into any program. I could even take this into traditional painting. I'm excited to try this with like oil paints and acrylics just to see what happens. You never know. It just really interesting stuff. And it's a lot of fun. And like I said at the very beginning, fun is a word that sometimes is not in my vernacular when it comes to work. You know what I mean? But having this method, it feels like it opened up a part of my brain that hasn't been opened before. And that's super exciting. So basically the moral of this, give this a shot. See if it's for you. It may not be. It's very kind of esoteric. It's kind of out left field, very abstract in nature. But then you start solidifying it later. You start making it more logical and concrete as you go. But maybe this might be a method to shake things up for you. And let this be almost like a call to action. Maybe you have some art books laying around, or magazines, or, you know, some old making of books or art books, or maybe some websites you like to go to that you studied from years ago, maybe a year, 2 years, 5 years ago. Go back to that stuff. Go back to those tutorials. Go back to that magazine article or whatever. Try it again. Because you may come up knowing more now because you're a better artist than you were, you know, however many years ago, just because you've been doing it for so long now and your time has been invested and you've had some experience under your belt. Maybe you notice something about that technique that kind of eluded you before, but that you notice it now and you're like, whoa, how did I not see this before? I've been reading this book 10 times over and it never clicked, but this time it did. That's exciting, man, because now you have that wherewithal. You have that confidence of being like, I've tried it this other way. It's worked okay. It's gotten me so far. It's gotten me to a certain point. But now utilizing this knowledge, I can do something even more. So yeah, let me know what you think. Would you be interested in trying this style? It's very dynamic. I would love to see what everyone's able to do with it. Yeah, just if you're into it, just search up Notan, Notan, on Google. And it's going to show you some cool examples and references. And it's very graphic design in nature. But man, it's powerful. It's super powerful. It's like getting the best gasoline for your vehicle. You know what I mean? I'm putting like nitrous boosters on there. It really does, man. It makes it so much faster and better. Oh, man, I can't recommend it enough. I'm going to definitely be doing this more and more and more. And yeah, I think this is actually going to end up solving a lot of the issues and problems that I was running into. But man, it's so much fun. But that's my time for this time. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to see what you make. Like I said, I'm going to have links to like Framed Ink 1 and 2, and also my Art of Krita book and all that stuff in the description below. So I highly recommend grabbing those because they have been game changers for me. I've read them cover to cover multiple times, but now it's finally starting to click. And man, there is gold. There is some diamonds in that one. So yeah, until next time, you guys take care, go make cool art, and we will see you next time. Peace.